Today, we're going to settle the issue of those on the left looking to punish Joe Biden at the ballot box, and I interview voting rights reporter Ari Berman about the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact and whether it can be enacted, and the ways in which Republicans have come to rely on minority rule. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So there's been a lot of commentary, mostly from young people and progressives, about how they're not going to vote for Joe Biden because they don't believe that he earned their vote, mostly as a result of Israel, Gaza, or inflation or housing. The reasons differ, but generally fall into that category. And then I've also seen a lot of other Democrats lose their minds over this because the country is teetering on the brink of autocracy, and if the coalition that defeated Trump in 2020 falls apart, then so does our democracy. And I know a lot of you watching have dealt with the same thing, and that it can be tough to navigate this because as a general societal norm, you're not going to be able to persuade someone by yelling at them or criticizing them. So here's my take on how to navigate this issue, and it's actually pretty simple. This election is not about punishing Joe Biden. This election is about us and the future that we want. For example, I want to live in a country that will protect abortion rights and contraception rights and IVF. That's about me. That's what I want for myself and my family. Joe Biden is the better vehicle to get me there. I want to live in a country that takes climate change seriously and will take efforts to combat it and wind down our reliance on fossil fuels. That's about me. That's what I want for the future of humanity. Joe Biden is the better vehicle to get me there. I want to live in a country where the rich pay their fair share and where those in the middle and at the bottom get the support they need to live their lives with dignity. That is about me. That's what I want for the working class in this country. Joe Biden is the better vehicle to get us there. I want to live in a country where DACA recipients aren't deported. Joe Biden is the better vehicle to get us there. I want to live in a country where the Supreme Court isn't 6-3 or even 7-2 conservative. If Trump wins, he will replace Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito with 40-year-olds and may even replace Sonia Sotomayor. That would cement Republican rule on the court for the rest of our lives, with huge implications for abortion rights, contraception, same-sex marriage, gun rights, fair maps, the Voting Rights Act, and democracy. I don't want that for the future of this country, so Joe Biden is the better vehicle to get us there. In all of these examples, it's not about Joe Biden, it's about me and the future I want. It's about us and the future we want. For all of those examples, Joe Biden is the better vehicle to get us there. And look, this is not to carry water for the things he did that you may be unhappy with. I absolutely understand and appreciate that people are vehemently unhappy with Israel, with Gaza, with inflation. I am by no means here trying to claim that Joe Biden is perfect, because he's not. But here's the thing. They're never going to be perfect. I've never seen a politician in my entire life whose views align with mine on every issue. And that's okay. That's how it is. That's how it goes. I'm not marrying the president. I don't pray to the president. Joe Biden is not my deity. No politician is. They are vehicles to get me and us closer to the future we want. You've heard the saying, voting isn't marriage, it's public transport. You're not waiting for the one, you're getting the bus. And if there isn't one to your destination, you don't not travel, you take the one getting you closest to where you want to be. If I were to say, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden because he wasn't perfect on every issue, that would be me sacrificing my future. And using my vote to punish Joe Biden is not more important than using my vote to protect my future. That's giving him all the power. That's making this election about him and not about us. Joe Biden is 80 years old. He's not going to be around forever. But most of us are going to be around a hell of a lot longer than that. And so, what's more important? Getting a jab in to voice your dissatisfaction with a politician, or finding the bus to get you closest to your destination? And look, I think that progressives, of which I absolutely consider myself, play a really important role in politics, especially right now. I think we need to push Biden to the left. And by the way, we have. The notion that this lifelong, moderate, white, working-class Democrat would be the one to cancel $170 billion in student loan debt is crazy. That he would be the most pro-climate president in history? That he would be the one to beat Big Pharma and finally get the government to negotiate lower drug prices? That he would be the one to sign the first gun safety legislation into law in 30 years? Biden is the most progressive president of our lifetimes. That wouldn't have happened without progressives pushing him and without a president who is willing to be pushed, if not on everything, at least on a lot. But if the end result is that progressives abandon Biden because they didn't get everything, well, then there's not going to be a whole lot of incentive for any president to listen to progressives in the future if they know that they demand 100% absolute purity and nothing less. If we want Democratic politicians to continue governing in a way that is progressive, they need to know that we're a reliable bloc, not a fickle one. That's how we lose power. We should be doing everything we can to gain it. So if you hear these arguments from people who've soured on Biden, I think the move here is to remind them that it's going to be their country for a whole lot longer than it's going to be Biden's, and that they have the opportunity to usher in a future that may not be exactly what they want, but it's still going to be a hell of a lot closer to it than with Donald Trump in office. Coming up is a preview of a really amazing interview, but first, a quick reminder, my new book, Shameless, is now available for pre-sale. And look, you all know that I don't put a single piece of content of mine behind a paywall. I don't do memberships or sponsored posts. I don't do commercials. This is the one time that I'll ask you to support me and my work. And you'll get a book that I'm super proud of with a foreword written by Jamie Raskin. Also, just to explain why pre-sales specifically are important, the way that it works is that all pre-sales go toward the New York Times bestseller list, which as an English major is my holy grail. It also helps the publisher know how many copies to print so that we don't fall short come release day. And of course, more copies sold in this pre-order period means more buzz. So it's overall just very helpful. So if you think you might order the book at some point, I would highly recommend doing so in this pre-order period. I'll put the link right here on the screen or in the post description of this video. Or as always, you can go to briantylercohen.com/book. And thank you. I very much appreciate it. Okay, here's a preview of my interview with Ari Berman. Can you give us a lay of the land right now as far as the Senate and the Electoral College are concerned in terms of how much power Republicans wield as a minority party in this country?
Well, we have these basic governing institutions that violate fundamental notions of one person, one vote. You can win the presidency without getting a majority of support, as we saw with Donald Trump. You can hold the Senate without having majority support, as we've seen repeatedly with Republicans in the Senate getting a majority of seats in the body, but representing a minority of Americans. We've seen a Supreme Court where, for the first time in U.S. history, 5 of 6 conservative justices on the Supreme Court were appointed by Republican presidents who lost the popular vote initially and confirmed by senators representing a minority of Americans. Then, of course, once Republicans get hold of these counter-majoritarian institutions, they try to rig them further to undermine the democratic process even more, to create this feedback loop where these undemocratic institutions lead to more undemocratic outcomes.
By the way, they're also trying something in Texas recently where now they're saying, even though there are 254 counties in Texas and the majority of Texans live in 7 of them, they're trying to make it so that if you want to win a statewide race in Texas, that you have to win the majority of counties, knowing full well that the only way to do that is to win, these overwhelmingly white rural counties that won't go for Democrats. It would basically be a way to cement permanent minority rule for Republicans.
Yeah, it's minority rule on steroids. And that was the situation before the one person, one vote rulings in the 1960s. Georgia had something called the county unit system that gave rural counties far more power than more urban counties when it came to electing things like the governor of the state. And the Supreme Court struck down these kind of measures in the 1960s. And Earl Warren said the one person, one vote cases were the most important legacy of his court. And that court did a lot of really important things. And I think now what we're seeing is Republicans trying to move backwards in so many different ways to take away rights and democratic norms that have been established since the 1960s and onwards and go back to things like incredible malapportionment or in Jim Crow voting systems and things of that nature that we thought we'd moved past, but evidently we haven't.
Does it worry you that perhaps they view this Supreme Court as their way to shoehorn through a lot of these things that might not have worked, 50, 60 years ago, but that they clearly see an opening with today?
I think that's why the Republican Party and the conservative movement has been so focused on trying to take over the courts, because they use the courts as their vehicle to implement a radical, extreme, and unpopular agenda. They were never going to gut the Voting Rights Act through the normal political process. It was too popular. They were never going to overturn Roe v. Wade through the normal political process. It was too popular. So they've used the courts to do all of these things that they know they can't do through the normal course of legislation. Then they appoint these justices through the most undemocratic schemes possible, and then those justices then deepen the undemocratic crisis in America in ways that benefit the Republican Party and deepen minority rule in America. So there's a feedback loop going on here in terms of getting the justices on the court and the justices acting in a way that will create more Republicans who will then do more unpopular things.
To watch the full interview with Ari Berman, click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course to hear more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.